My son humiliated me at his wedding. Oh, how those words echo in my mind. The champagne glass in my hand trembled, not from some grand joy or the bubbling excitement of a celebration. No, it was from a profound, biting coldness that had settled deep within my soul, a chill that seeped into my bones as I sat there, listening to my only son, Michael, deliver his wedding speech. Every word he uttered, every polished phrase, felt like another icy dagger twisting in my heart. He stood at the microphone, so handsome, so self-assured, in his perfectly tailored suit. I remember thinking how proud Robert, my dear late husband, would have been to see him like this, so successful, so poised. But then Michael started thanking people. He thanked Felicity's parents, his new in-laws, for their unconditional support and for welcoming him as a true son. His voice was thick with genuine emotion when he spoke of them, a warmth and gratitude I hadn't heard directed at me in years. He thanked. Each name, each heartfelt thanks was a fresh wave of realization crashing over me. But for me, his mother, the woman who brought him into this world, who nursed him through fevers, who sacrificed her own dreams for his, not a single word, not a mention. It was as if I simply didn't exist, a ghost at my own son's grand debut. I was seated at a small, round table, pushed far into a quiet corner of the expansive ballroom. It was a table for distant acquaintances, for those who merely filled seats. The main table, adorned with grand floral arrangements and sparkling crystal, held Michael, Felicity, and her beaming family, all laughter and shared toasts. And I, Eleanor, his mother, was in the periphery, an afterthought. The bitter irony of it all gnawed at me. This opulent hall, with its soaring ceilings and glittering chandeliers, held so many silent memories for me. It was in spaces just like this, or rather, in our modest home, that Robert and I had pored over school brochures, dreamed of Michael's future, saved every penny. It was here, in this very town, that we had built a life, quiet and unassuming, but rich in love and painstaking effort. And now, in this place that symbolized so much of our unspoken history, I had become utterly invisible. The pain wasn't a loud, dramatic wail that drew attention. It was a silent, suffocating ache. My throat felt tight, my eyes burned, but I refused to let a single tear escape. I saw the quick, sympathetic glances from some distant relatives, faces I recognized from family gatherings long ago. Their expressions held a quiet sadness, a silent acknowledgement of the public rejection unfolding before us. And then there was Felicity, my new daughter-in-law. Her perfectly made-up face held a triumphant smile, her eyes sparkling with what seemed to be a cold, quiet satisfaction. It truly felt as though she had meticulously orchestrated every single detail of this humiliation, ensuring my exclusion was as visible as her own newfound status. My son, the boy I'd nursed through sleepless nights, taught to read, celebrated every small victory. The young man I'd watched grow, filled with hopes for his future. He stood there, proudly, publicly discarding me, It was a calculated act of emotional coldness, a clear statement that I was no longer part of his narrative, his new life. He was doing it to please his new, wealthy family, to solidify his place in their elevated world. And the most painful part, his glance. He swept his eyes across the room, acknowledging everyone. Yet, when they briefly, fleetingly touched my table, there was nothing. No warmth, no recognition, just a blank, almost dismissive look, as if I were a complete stranger who had somehow wandered into this scene of his grand success, someone who clearly didn't belong. In that exact moment, as the room erupted in thunderous applause for Michael, a chilling, unwavering certainty settled deep within me. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was a quiet, resolute knowing. Michael was celebrating the beginning of his splendid new life, a future he believed was firmly within his grasp, secured by his talents and his new connections. But he had no idea, absolutely no idea, that with this profound act of contempt, this public repudiation of his own mother, he was also, with a brutal finality, sealing the fate of his own future. A future he believed was already guaranteed, a birthright, built on a lifetime of quiet sacrifice, a foundation. Everything he believed was his by right. My name is Eleanor. I'm 76 years old. I know that sounds like a lot, but some days, especially like that day, I felt every single one of them. I'm a retired teacher, a simple woman who found immense joy in the quiet hum of a classroom, in watching young minds light up with understanding. And I am Robert's widow. Robert was my husband, my rock, the other half of my heart for over 50 years. He was a simple, hardworking man, just like me. We built our life together on common ground, on shared dreams, and on the belief that honesty and effort were the most valuable currencies. We never sought grand fortunes or lived extravagant lives. No, our days were modest, filled with the small comforts of home, the scent of his pipe tobacco, the rustle of my books. But they were rich, so incredibly rich, in love and in careful, painstaking planning. Together, we saved every single penny. Not for ourselves, not for luxuries we never really craved. We saved to ensure a peaceful old age, a time when we wouldn't have to worry. And more than anything, we saved for Michael, our son, our only child. We wanted to give him every single opportunity we never had. We watched him grow, celebrated his first steps, his first words. We scraped and we sacrificed, quietly, without complaint, so he could attend the best schools, go to university, build a career that shone brighter than anything we could have imagined for ourselves. Every late night Robert worked, every extra lesson I tutored. It was all for Michael, for his future. He achieved it all thanks to our silent, unyielding effort. After Robert passed away, a quiet void settled in our small apartment. I continued living there, surrounded by the comforting weight of his books, by photographs that whispered memories of a lifetime spent together. Michael was always my pride, my greatest joy. But little by little, I felt a shift. As he climbed the social ladder, as his circle of friends grew wealthier and more influential. He seemed to grow, ashamed of his origins, of us, of our quiet, unassuming life. He visited less and less, and when he did come by, it was always in a rush, a quick cup of tea, a hurried conversation before he was off again. Still, my mother's heart, ever resilient, always found an excuse for his absence. I'd tell myself it was just the frantic pace of modern life, the demands of his important career. I believed he loved me deep down. That was enough. What Michael never knew, what he couldn't possibly have imagined, was that his father, my Robert, in addition to being hardworking and utterly devoted, was also a very clever man. More clever than anyone gave him credit for. Robert had a quiet genius for making things grow, for seeing potential where others saw only empty space. He took our hard-earned money, the money we'd saved, it was nestled just a few blocks from the town center, a beautiful old building with such character. It was our secret, our deep, hidden safety net for the future, for my future. Robert always looked at me, his eyes full of love and a quiet resolve, and he'd say, "Eleanor, this is to ensure your peace, not the greed of others." He understood things, my Robert. He always did. I kept this secret locked away, tucked deep in my heart, held tightly in a forgotten drawer. I kept it safe, quiet, hoping, praying. I would never, ever need to use it as a shield. I kept this secret locked away, tucked deep in my heart, held tightly in a forgotten drawer. I kept it safe, quiet, hoping, praying. I would never, ever need to use it as a shield. But then everything started to worsen. It was when Michael, my son, announced his engagement to Felicity. She came from a very influential family, one with a name that carried weight in our town. And right from the start, I saw it. I saw how Michael struggled, how he bent himself into knots, trying so hard to be accepted by them, to fit into their world. It was heartbreaking to watch. The first frictions, they were subtle, like faint whispers you almost don't hear. Felicity, his fiancée, took over everything, completely. She decided on the wedding dress, the one I had always dreamed of helping my son's wife pick out. She chose the menu, every dish, every flavor, the invitations, the guest list, even the type of paper they were printed on. I tried, I really did. I tried to offer an opinion, a small suggestion, something simple like the color of the flowers. But Michael would cut me off. He'd say it so impatiently, like I was a child. "Mother," he'd sigh, sometimes rubbing his temples. "Just let us handle it, okay? These things are too modern for you. You really wouldn't understand." Each time he said it, a piece of my heart just ached. I felt like a stranger during the preparations for my own son's wedding. My own son. It was surreal. Every single decision, from the smallest napkin to the grandest centerpiece, it was all made to impress the bride's wealthy friends, her family, her circle. And I, with my simple ways, my quiet clothes, my life so different from theirs, I just clearly didn't fit into their grand script. I tried to talk to Michael about it, truly tried. I told him as calmly as I could that I felt sidelined, pushed away. I said it hurt, but he just dismissed me again. He told me I was being dramatic. He said I should just be happy for his happiness, as if my feelings didn't matter, as if my role as his mother was just to be a silent, smiling spectator. The final straw, the one that truly broke something inside me, it came one afternoon over the phone. He called me. He told me quite casually that the wedding would be held at the Rosewood Manor. He spoke of the place with such enthusiasm, his voice bright and excited. He described its luxury, its beauty, its perfect location, how grand it was, how much Felicity loved it. He was completely unaware, completely blind to the bitter irony of that choice. He was inviting me, his mother, as a mere spectator, to a spectacle staged on the very ground his father, my Robert, and I had built with so much sweat, with so much hope, with every single one of our life savings. The place that was meant to be my peace. A lump formed in my throat. Thick and painful. My eyes burned, but I swallowed the tears. I swallowed the pain. I swallowed the bitter irony that choked me, and I accepted. I just said, "Yes, Michael." That sounds lovely, because I still believed. Deep down, foolishly, perhaps, I still believed that on the actual wedding day, surrounded by all that love and ceremony, his heart would speak louder. I truly believed his heart would break through, and he would remember. He would remember who I was. The day of the party arrived. The air outside the Rosewood Manor felt strangely heavy, almost expectant, as if it too knew what was about to unfold. I dressed carefully, in one of my simple, dark dresses, trying to look presentable, to be appropriate for such a grand occasion. But as I walked through the familiar, ornate entrance, the very threshold of a place I knew like the back of my hand, a place Robert and I had chosen with such hope, I was met not with warmth, but with a polite, impersonal efficiency. A young woman, the ceremonialist, with a clipboard and a bright, impersonal smile, approached me. She didn't recognize me, of course. Why would she? I was just another guest. She led me not to the small, intimate gathering area I might have expected, but directly to a table tucked away at the very back of the immense hall. It was a table set for 10, filled with some of Michael's distant colleagues, faces I barely recognized from old company picnics. They offered polite, strained smiles, clearly uncomfortable, perhaps even pitying. The main table, the one shimmering with crystal and towering floral arrangements, the table reserved for family, was a cruel, vivid portrait of my exclusion. There they were, Michael, Felicity, and her parents. Laughter rang out from their corner. Toasts were given, glasses clinked in joyous celebration. And I watched from afar, a silent, invisible observer. Then came the speeches. The air crackled with anticipation, and my heart, despite everything, still held a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Michael would say something small, a simple acknowledgement, a nod to the past. He took the microphone, standing tall and confident. His voice, when he began to speak, choked with emotion. But that emotion, I realized with a sickening lurch, wasn't for me. It wasn't for our shared history. It was for them. He thanked his in-laws, Felicity's parents, his voice thick with what sounded like genuine gratitude. He spoke of how they had welcomed him as a son, of their unconditional support. He spoke of the brilliant future he would now have, building a life beside his new and wonderful family. Each word was a deliberate exclusion. Not once, not a single time, was my name uttered. There was no glance in my direction, no small gesture, no fleeting moment of recognition. It was as if I didn't exist, as if his life before Felicity, before this new family, was a blank slate, erased. The silence at my table was agonizing. It wasn't a comfortable quiet, but a heavy, awkward one. I felt the pitying glances from the people around me, their quick, almost apologetic looks. I heard the faint, hushed whispers, though I couldn't make out the words. But I knew what they were thinking. My heart didn't just break into pieces. It shattered, exploded into a million tiny, sharp shards. There in that place, the Rosewood Manor, the very symbol of my future security, the quiet promise Robert had made to me, I was publicly stripped of my dignity as a mother. My spirit, once so resilient, felt utterly exposed, laid bare for all to see. The party continued around me. The music grew louder, the laughter swelled, the celebration became even more boisterous. But for me, in that precise moment, everything was over. The music, the joy, the grand affair, it was all just noise. I simply stood up, silently, without a word to anyone, and I left. I walked out of the hall, through the grand lobby, and into the quiet night. No one noticed, not a soul. That night, back in my small apartment, the pain was a physical thing. It didn't let me sleep. It was a searing, constant ache that settled deep in my bones, in my very soul. But through that profound pain, as the hours ticked by and dawn approached, something else began to form. A quiet, unsettling clarity. It was a clarity I hadn't known I needed. A clear, sharp truth that cut through the fog of my grief. That night, the pain didn't let me sleep. It was a searing, constant ache that settled deep in my bones, in my very soul. But through that profound pain, as the hours ticked by and dawn approached, something else began to form. A quiet, unsettling clarity. It was a clarity I hadn't known I needed. A clear, sharp truth that cut through the fog of my grief. The next day, the sun rose, and with it, a strength I didn't know I still possessed. The profound sadness that had consumed me, that had left me feeling like a hollow shell, it gave way. Slowly, but surely, it turned into a calm, unwavering resolve. There was no room left for anger anymore. No space for vengeance, only for dignity. My own dignity, and Robert's legacy. I remembered his words, spoken so many times, his hand gently on my arm. "Eleanor, your peace first." He knew, my Robert knew. He understood that one day I might need to protect myself, even from our own son. I picked up the phone. My fingers, usually a little stiff, felt steady. I called Mr. Thompson. He's our trusted lawyer. He has been for over 30 years. A quiet, unassuming man, but sharp, with a kind face and eyes that held understanding. He was the only one who knew all our secrets, the silent truths Robert and I had built together. He knew about everything, about the Rosewood Manor. I scheduled a meeting. For the very next morning, I didn't waste a minute. While Michael and Felicity were probably traveling for their honeymoon somewhere far away, laughing and toasting, already making grand plans with the inheritance they deemed so certain, so perfectly theirs, I was quietly taking control of my destiny and taking control of my husband's legacy. Robert had worked his whole life for my peace, not for someone else's greed. And I would honor that. I wasn't planning to destroy my son. No. My heart, even after all that had happened, still held love for him. But I needed to show him. I needed to show him that love and respect are not bargaining chips to be tossed aside when convenience calls. That a mother, any mother, is not a disposable object to be used and then discarded once she's no longer useful. His contempt at the wedding, in that grand hall, at the hotel, our hotel, it was the key. The key that had finally, painfully opened a door I had kept locked for so long. A door holding a secret I never wanted to reveal. He humiliated me in the very symbol of my power, without even knowing it. The profound irony of it all. And now I would use that very same power, not to be vengeful, but to rise again, to reclaim my peace. The signature I was about to give, it would not be an act of revenge. No, it would be an act of something far more profound. It would be an act of poetic justice. The days after my meeting with Mr. Thompson blurred into weeks. Each morning I woke with a quiet purpose, but also with a lingering thread of hope, almost against my will. A tiny, foolish part of me still waited for a call, for a message, a simple text, perhaps, saying, "Mother, I'm thinking of you." But the phone remained silent, utterly, deafeningly silent. It was a silence that screamed abandonment, louder than any angry words ever could. It wasn't just quiet. It was an active absence, a deliberate void where my son used to be. The honeymoon ended, of course. I knew that. I saw it. Not because Michael or Felicity told me, but because I saw their lives playing out on social media. Friends would mention things, or sometimes I'd see photos pop up, shared by mutual acquaintances. There they were, back in town, living their grand new life. Michael smiling broadly, Felicity elegant and radiant by his side. They were dining in expensive restaurants, the kind with menus I couldn't even read. They were attending exclusive events, their faces glowing with a self-satisfied pride. Each photo, each casual mention, was another quiet blow. It was clear my existence had been completely erased from their equation. I was no longer a part of their narrative, their bright, shining future. I was a chapter closed, a book put away on a dusty shelf. They truly believed they had won. They had the wedding, the status, the public approval. And they believed they had me, silent and compliant, waiting for whatever scraps they might eventually throw my way. One afternoon, The quiet weight of it all became too much. The constant, gnawing uncertainty, the silence. I took a deep breath, gathered what little hope was left, and I took the initiative. I called Michael's phone. It rang for a long time, too long. Then a click, and Felicity's voice answered. It wasn't warm. It was cold, sharp, edged with an almost dismissive politeness. "Hello, Eleanor," she said, her tone devoid of any real greeting. "We'll call you later, Eleanor. Michael is very busy with work and our new life." The word "our" hung in the air, a deliberate pronouncement. It was spoken with an emphasis that definitively, irrevocably excluded me. Our new life. It meant Michael and her. No room for anyone else. No room for me. I didn't say anything back. I just listened to her quick, clipped words, and then, very slowly, I hung up the phone. The receiver felt heavy in my hand, like a stone. I felt the full weight of loneliness then, as never before. Their ingratitude wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow, agonizing poison, seeping into every part of my quiet world. I tried to rationalize, to find excuses. Maybe they truly were busy. Maybe this was just a phase. But deep down, I knew. This was who they were now. This was their choice. The crisis, the one that had been building so quietly, so insidiously, reached its undeniable peak a few days later. I received a bank notification, an alert on my phone. It was about a strange movement in a joint account, an account I had maintained with Michael for years, for small emergencies, for unexpected needs. A small fund, but always there for both of us. Robert had set it up years ago, saying it was good to have a shared safety net. I saw the transaction, a significant withdrawal, not something small, but a large sum. He had tried to use the money, my money, for a down payment on a luxury car, a sleek, expensive model he'd likely seen in one of those magazines Felicity liked. He hadn't asked, he hadn't informed me. He had just gone ahead, assuming that fund was part of his right, part of his guaranteed future, his rightful inheritance, available for whatever he pleased. It was the final sign, the last undeniable confirmation. To him, I was no longer his mother, not a person with feelings, with a history, with dignity. I was merely a source of resources, a well to draw from, something to be exploited, taken from, without a second thought. My heart, which had been so bruised, so aching, now felt strangely hard, cold. That final act of disrespect, that casual assumption of my resources as his own, it solidified my decision. There was no turning back now. The path was clear. I had hesitated, I had hoped, I had waited, but no more. That final act of disrespect solidified my decision. There was no turning back now. I scheduled a meeting, a formal one. I called Michael's secretary first, then Felicity's assistant, playing the part of the frail, slightly confused old mother. I used the excuse that I needed to discuss important family matters, something about an old bank account Robert had set up. A minor detail, nothing pressing, just something I needed their input on. To my surprise, they accepted quickly. Too quickly, really. They probably imagined I would offer them some late wedding gift, a substantial check perhaps, or perhaps finally reveal the details of my will, confirming the grand inheritance they felt was already theirs. They had no idea. The meeting place? Conference room at the Rosewood Manor, the same hotel where my humiliation had been so meticulously orchestrated. The very place where Michael had erased me from his narrative. It felt right, poetic even. They arrived promptly, stepping into the elegant room with that familiar air of superiority, of effortless importance. Michael looked sharp in a tailored suit. Felicity, impeccable in a designer dress, her smile as dazzling as her diamond ring. They sat across from me, a polished, untouchable duo. Mr. Thompson, my quiet, loyal lawyer, sat by my side, a steady, reassuring presence. He offered them a small, polite nod. Michael barely glanced at him, already settling in, ready to hear what his old mother had to say. I took a deep breath. My hands, surprisingly, didn't tremble. I began to speak, my voice calm, firm, a little deeper than usual, as if it was coming from a place of deep, settled conviction. I called you both here today. I started, looking first at Michael, then at Felicity, because this place, the Rosewood Manor, holds a very special meaning for our family, a meaning that you, Michael, never truly knew. I paused for a moment, letting my words hang in the air, watching their expressions, which were still a mixture of polite expectation and mild impatience. Then, very deliberately, I reached into the large leather folder Mr. Thompson had placed on the table before me. I pulled out a thick, official-looking document, carefully folded. The hotel deed, the actual legal deed. I unfolded it slowly, reverently, the crisp paper rustling softly in the quiet room. And then I placed it on the polished mahogany table between us, flat, unmistakable. Their eyes, first curious, then suddenly wide with dawning comprehension, fixed on the document. They saw the official seals, the dates, the property description, and then, clearly visible, the owners' names. Eleanor and Robert Davies. Michael's jaw, which moments before had been set in a confident line, dropped open. His eyes, usually so calculating, went completely blank, then filled with a confusion that rapidly morphed into disbelief. He looked at the deed, then at me, then back at the deed, as if trying to reconcile what he was seeing with what he thought he knew. Felicity, usually so composed, so perfectly poised, turned absolutely pale. The color drained from her face, leaving her features sharp and almost ghostly. Her perfect smile vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed astonishment. "Your father and I bought this hotel," I continued, my voice gaining a quiet strength, still calm, still firm, with a lifetime of hard work. Every penny we earned, every sacrifice we made went into this. It was meant to be your main legacy, Michael. Your great inheritance, the foundation for your future. I looked directly into his stunned eyes. But inheritance, my son, is not just money. It's not just property. It's respect. It's memory. It's love. It's the dignity of those who came before you. And you, I said, my voice unwavering, you threw all of that away on your wedding day, right here, in this very hall, I gestured vaguely around the elegant room, the subtle irony not lost on me, even if it was on them. You chose to discard me, to humiliate me, in the very place your father built for my peace, for your future. I saw a flicker of something in Michael's eyes then. Not regret, not yet. More like a dawning, terrifying realization. A dawning of just how much he had miscalculated. Then, I reached back into the folder. This time, I pulled out another document. Smaller, more personal. My new will. It had been finalized and notarized just last week. I slid a copy across the table towards them. The Rosewood Manor, I stated, my voice clear and resolute. The most valuable asset Robert and I ever built will not be yours. It will be entirely donated to a foundation that supports the education of underprivileged children. Children who will appreciate the opportunities they are given. The signature is already notarized. The shock on their faces was profound. It didn't bring me joy to see them so utterly stunned, so stripped of their arrogant composure. But a deep, quiet feeling settled within me then. A feeling of peace. A peace I hadn't felt in a very long time. The air in the room seemed to shift, heavy with the weight of unspoken words and shattered expectations. This wasn't revenge. This was simply justice, and my journey, I knew, was only just beginning. The shock on their faces. It truly didn't bring me joy, not a triumphant glee, not a burst of satisfying revenge. No, what settled within me was a quiet, profound feeling of peace. A deep, steady peace I hadn't felt in such a very long time. It was as if a heavy weight I'd been carrying for years, for decades, had finally been lifted. The air in that room, the very same room where Michael had celebrated his new life without me, seemed to clear, to lighten. My journey, I knew, was only just beginning. In the months that followed that meeting, my life changed. And not just a little. It changed for the better, in ways I hadn't even dared to dream of. The silence that had once screamed abandonment, the phone that never rang, the emptiness where Michael used to be, that silence was now different. It was no longer a void, but a quiet, peaceful space. It was my space. Michael did try to call me a few times. His calls were a confusing mix, alternating between pleas, desperate sounding at times, and then sharp accusations. He'd accuse me of ruining his life, of being cruel, of betraying him. But I stood firm, not with anger anymore, because the anger had long since faded. I met his words with the tranquility of someone who had done the right thing, not for vengeance, but for dignity. For my own soul, I didn't disinherit him completely. No, that wasn't my intention. He would still receive my small apartment, the one Robert and I had shared for so many years, and my modest savings. It was enough for a comfortable life if he chose it. But the grand, luxurious future he had so carefully planned at my expense, the one he believed was his birthright, built on assumptions and disrespect, that future simply evaporated. My new routine began to form, slowly at first. Then, with a natural rhythm, I started frequenting the foundation that will receive the donation, the Rosewood Manor. It's such a wonderful place, truly. Seeing the smiles of those children, their bright, eager faces as they learned and played, knowing that the effort of my entire life, everything Robert and I had worked for, would now serve to give them a dignified future, filled me with a renewed purpose. A beautiful, clear purpose. It was like watching seeds sprout. I reconnected with old friends, women I'd lost touch with over the years, caught up in my own quiet sorrow and Michael's increasingly distant life. We met for tea, shared stories, laughed until our sides hurt. I even started taking gardening classes at the community center. Me, with my 2 left green thumbs. But there's such a simple joy in coaxing a tiny sprout from the soil, in watching something beautiful grow. And I started to travel too, nothing grand or extravagant, just small trips to nearby historic towns I'd always wanted to see. Places Robert and I had talked about visiting, but never quite got around to. Simple pleasures, you see. Things I had always put off, always telling myself I was too busy or too old, or that there would be time later. My life didn't become luxurious. No, not in the way Michael and Felicity might define it, but it became truly rich. Rich in peace. Rich in the quiet hum of dignity, and rich in new, unexpected joys. Sometimes I sit on my apartment balcony, my hands still a little dirty from tending my small pots of flowers. The sun warms my face, and I think about everything that happened. The wedding, the humiliation, the pain. It feels like a story from another lifetime now. I no longer feel that sharp, burning pain, only a quiet, resolute certainty. The certainty that a woman, however old she may seem, however simple her life, should never ever be underestimated. Our greatest power, I've learned, is not in what we possess, not in material wealth, but in the unwavering strength we discover within ourselves when our respect, our very worth, is denied to us. It's in knowing who you are, even when others try to tell you you're nobody. I discovered that the true inheritance is not what we leave behind, not the money or the property we pass on. No, the true inheritance is the life we choose to live with dignity every single day. Until the very end, I discovered that the true inheritance is not what we leave behind, not the money or the property we pass on. No, the true inheritance is the life we choose to live with dignity every single day until the very end. And that's what I'm living now, this quiet, dignified life. It's funny, isn't it? How sometimes the deepest pain can unlock the truest parts of yourself. For so long, I believed my worth was tied to being a mother, a caregiver, someone who sacrificed without question. I thought love meant giving everything, even when it left me empty. But what I learned through all of this is that love, real love, also includes self-respect. It means knowing when to stand tall, even when your knees are shaking. My journey from that humiliating day at the wedding to the quiet peace I feel now has taught me so much. It taught me that it's never too late to reclaim your voice, to stand up for your own worth, especially as an older woman. Sometimes I think society and even our own families can start to see us differently as we age. Like we're just fading away, becoming less important, less capable, less valuable. Like our opinions don't matter, or that we won't understand modern things. It's as if our years of experience, our lifetime of hard work and love somehow become invisible. We're often expected to be grateful for whatever little attention we get, to just be quiet and compliant, to become background noise. But we are not background noise. We are not just vessels for memories or sources of income or convenient caretakers. We are people with feelings, with dignity, with a lifetime of wisdom, hard-won and sometimes painful. My experience with Michael, with Felicity, it hurt me deeply. It made me feel like an object, something to be used and then put away. They saw me as a means to an end, a part of an equation for their future, not as the woman who loved and raised Michael. It was a harsh lesson, a very bitter pill to swallow. But it was a necessary one. It forced me to look inward, to remember Robert's words, to find the strength I thought I had lost. And what I found, what truly emerged, was the knowledge that my value isn't dependent on Michael's recognition or on Felicity's acceptance. My worth isn't determined by how much money I leave behind or by how grand my son's wedding was. My worth is simply in being Eleanor, in being me, in the life I lived with Robert, in the choices I made, in the quiet strength I found when I was pushed to my limit. Looking at the camera with a serene smile. And you? Have you ever felt invisible to those you should protect most? Have you felt your worth was measured only by what you could offer and not by who you are? Remember that your dignity is the only asset no one can take from you unless you allow it. It's the one thing you must guard fiercely, because once it's compromised, everything else feels hollow. It's what allows you to look at yourself in the mirror with pride, to sleep peacefully at night, knowing you honored yourself. It's the truest measure of your own peace. It's the truest measure of your own peace. And that's what I'm living now. This quiet, dignified life. It's funny, isn't it, how sometimes the deepest pain can unlock the truest parts of yourself. For so long, I believed my worth was tied to being a mother, a caregiver, someone who sacrificed without question. I thought love meant giving everything, even when it left me empty. But what I learned through all of this is that love, real love, also includes self-respect. It means knowing when to stand tall, even when your knees are shaking. My journey, from that humiliating day at the wedding to the quiet peace I feel now, has taught me so much. It taught me that it's never too late to reclaim your voice, to stand up for your own worth, especially as an older woman. Sometimes I think society, and even our own families, can start to see us differently as we age, like we're just fading away, becoming less important, less capable, less valuable, like our opinions don't matter, or that we won't understand modern things. It's as if our years of experience, our lifetime of hard work and love, somehow become invisible. We're often expected to be grateful for whatever little attention we get, to just be quiet and compliant, to become background noise. But we are not background noise. We are not just vessels for memories, or sources of income, or convenient caretakers. We are people with feelings, with dignity, with a lifetime of wisdom, hard-won and sometimes painful. My experience with Michael, with Felicity, it hurt me deeply. It made me feel like an object, something to be used and then put away. They saw me as a means to an end, a part of an equation for their future, not as the woman who loved and raised Michael. It was a harsh lesson, a very bitter pill to swallow. But it was a necessary one. It forced me to look inward, to remember Robert's words, to find the strength I thought I had lost. And what I found, what truly emerged, was the knowledge that my value isn't dependent on Michael's recognition or on Felicity's acceptance. My worth isn't determined by how much money I leave behind or by how grand my son's wedding was. My worth is simply in being Eleanor, in being me, in the life I lived with Robert, in the choices I made, in the quiet strength I found when I was pushed to my limit. It's in the quiet mornings now, sipping my tea, watching the birds, knowing I made a choice that honored my spirit. It's in the laughter I share with old friends, the simple joy of a blooming flower I've nurtured. There's a lightness in my step, a clarity in my mind that wasn't there before. The burden of expectation, the ache of disappointment, it's all gone, replaced by a calm certainty, a deep, abiding peace that truly comes from within. I think about Michael sometimes, yes, not with bitterness anymore, but with a quiet sadness for what he lost. Not the hotel, not the money, but the connection. The real, unconditional love that was always there, waiting. He chose a different path, and I chose mine. And mine led me here, to this serenity. That's why I wanted to share this story with you. Because sometimes, when you're going through something difficult, it helps to know you're not alone. To hear that others have faced similar pains, similar betrayals, and found their way through to the other side. To know that even when you feel invisible, you have an inner light that no one can extinguish unless you let them. My story isn't unique. I know that. Life is full of these moments, these crossroads where we have to choose between keeping our peace or clinging to what might have been. And for me, choosing peace, choosing dignity, was the only way forward. So, if my words have resonated with you, if this story has touched a chord, I hope it encourages you to find your own strength, to cherish your own worth. We're all on this journey, learning and growing and supporting each other through it all. And staying connected, sharing these very real, very human experiences. It's a wonderful way to feel less alone in this big world. And if you want to keep receiving real stories like this, pay attention. YouTube might be unsubscribing you without warning. Confirm you're still subscribed to the channel and hit the bell icon. It's just a little thing, but it means we can keep sharing, keep learning from each other, keep finding our own peace together. Because ultimately, dear friend, that's all any of us truly want, isn't it? To live a life of peace and to know we're not walking this path alone, to share our truths and to find strength in each other's stories.